we're back after playing an all-nighter to provide analysis of Bob Iger's first day back as Disney CEO, and it's been very quiet in that
I mean, it's a
there's
game.
not been. Well, I mean, I think we when they because it was sort of unplanned, there wasn't a plan, right? Like there wasn't, oh, we're going to have this meeting and we're going to do this. I mean, this all happened. This stunned everybody. Um, so you don't have those sort of um, that rollout that we had when Bob Iger transferred to Bob Chapek. But we did hear that he's supposed to talk to employees and cast today. Haven't heard anything. There hasn't even been an SEC filing checked. So, it just seems obviously it seems like everyone got caught off guard, which is understandable given the situation. But a lot of the sort of things we want to know would be inside a SEC filing, which we don't have. There also doesn't seem to be any major media outreach as of yet. Even to investment media such as CNBC and the like. So there's reports that basically a lot of executives were at the Elton John concert last night. That was a big sort of global live stream for Disney Plus, and then they kind of disappeared because they got their phone started buzzing. So, which is not unlike what happened to my life. I was sitting back ready to watch that stream, kind of see how that went, and it didn't. I mean, it went, but I was more focused on other things. A couple of things that have come out. I'm just seeing some reports. Obviously, it seems like the board reached out to Bob Iger on Friday. I read a report on Thursday saying that Bob was going to start to plan to kind of do like a round of meet and greets with various people. So while it's known that the board reached out to Bob Iger, I won't say it was completely out of the blue at that point, because I think Bob Iger had sort of had it with Bob Chapek. And we talked about how weird that earnings call was when it happened, and we're looking at it from a Disney fan's eyes. But I think it's interesting that seemed to be the final nail in the coffin. And just the way, not only, it's one thing to have bad earnings, but it's how you message it that matters. And his sort of inability to message that really it was sort of what started this process. They supposedly looked at other internal candidates, didn't see anyone was ready. One thing I've seen in sort of the early analysis is a lot of people are talking about Dana Walden. People like Kara Swisher are talking about Dana Walden. And obviously, the fans have a good relationship with Josh D'Amaro, and we talked about that ad nauseum. But I wonder if this sort of picking the Parks guy who is unable to have relationships with talent makes it less likely that a man who doesn't have relationships with talent, at least in the same way as a television executive would or a movie executive, will impact his chances of becoming CEO.
Yeah, although I don't know how much experience with talent you need to know not to call them selfish and
well, sure, right.
I mean, maybe you know.
Well, and the reason I bring that up is because I wonder if that's sort of going to be a test of Bob Iger's grit. Is because there's going to be pushback. Hey, you picked the Parks guy last time. He managed the Parks fine, but creative went to poop, and he if he does it again, then it'll be like he'll have to message that, and it'll be sort of. And Bob Iger has ignored investor advice to his success for decades, but and that's the thing that he can do that Bob Chapek couldn't. He has the goodwill to go. I'm looking right now on a chart, and it's Disney's forward PE, which is price to earnings. So basically, at the peak, there was 80 times earnings, right? When Netflix was when they were valuing it like a tech company. Now, obviously, a tech company at that time, and now it's down to a more normal level. So there seems to be some elasticity in the price. Analysts now are pricing it around 120. Stock is just under $100 as of last check, 98. 98.40, up about 7% on the news of Bob Chapek. It's been as high as 100 today. And I will say the market is down, which is impressive because if you look at the down number, you got to remember Disney's a component of the down. So even though Disney's up, the market is way down because Disney is sort of artificially offsetting any sort of negatives on it because it's only 30 stocks. So it's there's a lot going on here, and I'm gonna mute myself for just a sec to get a quick update, and I'll let I don't know if Doobie wants to talk to Kyle for a sec.
I'll just talk to myself, I guess. Yeah, no, I think there's a lot going on here, and it's what's also interesting is, I think people are excited about Iger coming back, but there is a little bit of pushback. Like the last time we talked about the quarter, we talked about how some of the issues that were cropping up weren't necessarily, I won't say the fault of Chapek, but they weren't initial. He didn't start them. They were kind of, coming home to roost. And also now there's kind of the feeling that, Iger, turned over the reins a month before everything hit the fan. And then now that's all kind of settled, he's like, all right, swoop back in. I think there's some truth to that. I don't think it's totally fair to say, like, obviously Chapek made a lot of his own mistakes. And I think Iger coming in to try to fix those makes sense. But, there's still a little bit of skepticism. I think that kind of cropped up when we learned that Iger was going to be writing a book about leadership, and especially focusing on the pandemic. And it's like, well, you weren't really in charge then. So I guess that's a good way to handle leadership in the pandemic, is to run away from
it. It's been interesting to my focus this morning has been on the social reaction to all this, which is almost universally positive, but it is interesting to see people reminding us that a lot of the issues Disney has right now started with Iger. But my favorite thing is to watch the stock market and see how it is. The company is the same company in terms of its assets, its liabilities, all that. On paper, it is the same company it was 3 days ago. And yet the optimism, it just shows the importance of the CEO, the importance of the leader. It's not a rote thing. There's a reason these guys make all this money.
But the market's moved on dumber news too. So it makes sense that it's going to pop for something like this. That's actually like a big deal. Whereas, like Ben said before, you watch the stock market when the earnings come out and it might go one way and then change once the CEO starts talking. And in this case, that was the opposite problem. I think it was Chapek's talking that got him in more trouble than the press release. But, the market is weird.
Yeah, and that's very. Are you ready yet, Ben? I'm sorry. So that's very true, but at least a lot of that time when markets change on news, it's news that will, it's something external, like, oh, well, there's a pandemic. Obviously, theme parks aren't going to do well, or something like that. This is strictly, we are changing a person, and so a different person will be making the decisions on the exact same set of circumstances, and we have so much more confidence in this person versus that person.
Or, it might not even necessarily be the person. It could just be the change itself. Like, if you're unhappy with the direction the thing's going, then you'll take any change as a positive.
Sure. And then the other thing that's been interesting is all the speculation on what changes this will bring within the company. And I'm not going to speculate with anyone's names, but, clearly Bob Iger has a vision that's probably different than Bob Chapek's. It's simply a matter of organization of the company. And so how will that manifest itself over the next few days and weeks?
And I think those will probably be the less the bigger changes to the company, but I'll say less sexy for Disney fans. I think Disney fans are expecting, like, oh, Genie Plus is gone next week, and I don't think that's going to happen, at least not that quickly. So, but yeah, I think that the organization, that news will probably start to leak out, and then we'll get bigger changes. I don't know. It's hard to say because, like, the timing of this is also interesting because there's, we have Thanksgiving and then the Christmas holiday. So there's so many, like, weird timing things. But if they're willing to make this announcement on a Sunday night before Thanksgiving, then I guess that those sort of traditional timing challenges don't really apply.
Well, I would like to point out that I don't think the timing is as odd as it may appear, because we knew that there was a board of directors meeting today, scheduled for today, where Carolyn, who is joining at the request of Dan Loeb, from Third Point Capital. So it seems like they wanted to get whatever they had to do done before the board meeting, or so that they could move forward and not have basically waste a board meeting, which could possibly have gotten particularly contentious, given the sort of outrage over the last earnings call. So I think that's, I kind of, as I mentioned last night, I expected today to be wild today because of the board meeting. But
so wait, I have a question. If they're meeting today, then how did they just call each other? Because Bob Chapek is on the board. So how does that work as far
sure.
as
So I mean, Bob Chapek got a vote in this essentially, and he's
not completely blindsided by it. Obviously,
Susan Arnold's the chairman of the board, and it remains chairman of the board. And so, and they can do things as an executive committee without sort of meeting. They probably had an emergency meeting before that other board member, that wild card board member, joined to get it done. But based on my reading of Bob Iger's book and Michael Eisner's book, they still kind of have sort of impromptu board meetings when. Yeah, I'm sure they had one when COVID happened. I'm sure they don't need to wait necessarily for the regular scheduled in-person board.
And is it a simple majority for this sort of thing, or is there? Yeah. Okay. And
what typically will happen is they will read the tea leaves, and if they know, unless it's particularly contentious, they go, okay, Bob Chapek might have saw that there were 7 people against him, and then said, was more focused on working out his severance than anything else at that point. And it'll be interesting to see too. One thing that I thought when Kara Swisher was on CNBC that was interesting is she specifically called out the sort of Bob Chapek's poor relationship with the fans. And sometimes we don't know if these things cross over from our little fan world to CNBC. So it'll be interesting to see what Bob Iger does to kind of reintroduce himself or make his claim to the fans. I mean, we talked last night about how his earliest deals was big things. He got rid of strategic planning, which didn't really affect fans directly, but did without fans knowing. Bought Pixar, obviously a huge sort of morale boost for Disney fans who love Pixar and saw Disney animation struggling. And then finally bringing Oswald, not a huge financial implication, but just was a nice statement to saying, hey, I care about these things. And, Bob Iger, throughout sort of his tenure, did things like, restoring Walt's office. He increased the size of the Walt Disney Archives. He was always one to be careful to not overvalue sort of heritage, because that can freeze you. And he did things like, destroying the Disney vault, essentially, except the one that he was in for last year. But that doesn't mean he didn't appreciate the Walt legacy. I mean, he talked about Walt a lot. And when Bob Chapek did it, it always felt like he was talking about Walt because he felt he needed to talk about Walt.
Yeah.
And I don't want to mislead anybody in that, this is not a panacea. Disney still has a lot of struggle, some of which was Bob Iger's making. But and his one big job right now is the one thing he was completely a failure at, which was Succession. And we'll see what happens.
You didn't greenlight that show because it went to HBO.
But I think I mean, as Disney fans though, you gotta look at what the options were. It's not just who you want; it's what was a realistic option. And at this point, it was Chapek, someone from the outside, or Bob Iger, which I guess is someone from the outside at this point. But and out of those options, as Disney fans, you want Bob Iger, and you hope that he's able to develop someone who Disney fans will also love in the next iteration, because it became clear. I mean, it became even clear when, talking to Jeremiah when he was off the record conversations, he didn't care about how people viewed him. Well, but that matters when you're CEO of the Walt Disney Company. it matters how your fans view you because they set the tone of the messaging at this point. I mean, that's probably not a great thing, because they don't always have the most myopic view, but they do. And the investment community obviously has an impact to you. So you can't just, you got to be liked to a point. That doesn't mean you just do whatever people want, but you got to be able to manage relationships. That's all a CEO does, right? And that's basically the job. They're not there scooping the ice cream, but they go and manage their team who make decisions and manage, and that's what, until you get down to the people who actually do work. And I think if we learned anything from this, it's that it's not just about being able to do the job. It's about being able to lead people to do the job when you become CEO.
I have a question about some more like logistics and things like that. So while Bob was retired for all of 11 months, he did make some investments and join some different companies in different capacities. So he invested in an avatar technology company called Genie. He sits on their board. He also invested in the Chernin Group, which is like owners of Funko, and then also advisor and investor in Canva, as well as GoPuff. Do you have any insight into how those investments and roles will be affected? Is there a conflict now that he's CEO of Disney again?
Well, and that's why I don't know. I mean, that I've seen that question publicly asked and with no answer about what that means, especially on the investment firm front, who could technically own fair chunks of Disney. That's why I'm really waiting for this SEC filing, which would kind of go through those conflicts, which may be why we don't have it, is because those things need to be discussed and decided. I mean, I don't know exactly what the rules are in this situation regarding when you got to file. I'm just pulling it up again right now. It's still nothing. So, I don't, to me, that's the most puzzling thing about this whole thing, is that there's not been a lot of disclosure, unlike, when they obviously bought 21st Century Fox, or even when they got Bob Chapek, like we knew what happened. And this one, we're getting reports and things, but it's not black and white on paper someplace. The one thing that
Chapek had to go clean out his office this
question
weekend?
too is, what's Bob Iger's opinion on general entertainment? Bob Chapek really pivoted to including non-franchise stuff, both on Disney Plus and Hulu. Obviously, Hulu being basically not franchised as it is, and with the need to either kind of decide if NBC is going to own it or Disney's going to own it. Where are they going to? What is Bob Iger's strategy? I would warn people to not listen to every talking head that you're hearing right now, because I mean, if Bob Iger has proven that he can do his own thing, and most of the time that's the right way to go. We see these things come out of left field. We think usually smaller, and then he just blows through with the obvious play in hindsight. But where's that investment? Does he just shut it off? Does he decrease it? Does he see value in it? That's really one of the outstanding questions at this point.
I have another question for you. Are you looking forward to the second edition of Ride of a Lifetime in 2 years?
I am. I think his next book got a lot more interesting whenever it comes out, because that's how we found out a lot of the stuff about the transition this first time was from his book, and that's where we're really going to get some answers here. But it doesn't seem like we have a. Part of me is also like, maybe he shouldn't be spending a lot of time writing a book right now, because there's a lot he's got to do, and not a lot of time. I mean, there's nothing that says he's only going to be there 2 years. There's nothing, that's his current contract, but that doesn't mean he has to leave in 2 years.
That's true. I mean, famously, he leaves when he says he's going to.
Right.
It's funny looking back at when Barbara Walters retired. And he's like, "Oh yeah, I'm out," and then we saw him for like another 5 years. It's pretty funny.
Right. I mean, I think he's been officially on the way out longer than, like, more than half the time he was the CEO of Disney.
Yeah.
And I don't mean that facetiously. I think that's actually true. But I think we got a lot we got to hear about. And it's funny because this is typically it's a slow investment week regardless, but it's pretty usually a slow week in terms of news. And it's funny to see all the media reporters like complaining about how they have to work this week now. But just gonna see if we get any more updates. Because it's new, it's hard to tell too, because this is typically a slow news period, whether the sort of lack of Disney news is related to people just still being in shock, or if it just was going to be a slow Disney news week. I will say ESPN did renew the deal for Nathan's hot dog eating contest.
Oh, thank gosh.
So,
I'm wondering if anyone's checked in on Willow Bay, because I don't want another Tom Brady situation happening here.
Can you imagine? That would be crazy. Let's see. We got any questions here? How Iger values streetmosphere type entertainment in the park. I don't know specifically about atmosphere entertainment per se, but I know he always felt that the parks needed to dream big, right? I mean, if you look at, Star Wars Galaxy's Edge, what it was going to be and what it became, it's one of the few concepts that grew as opposed to shrunk. It ended up.
It grew and then it shrunk.
Yeah, right. But, I think, but right now you're also in a different world in terms of the balance sheet. We talk about this a lot, but there's not a lot of cash flowing around. And with the equity markets being what and the interest rates going up, it's not as easy to just borrow free money essentially to build new rides. And I don't know, you're getting a sense the economy's starting to cool. So I don't know if the interest rates are going to start to level off. That's well outside my pay grade. But,
I think that's the feeling that will have to happen.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see where everything lands.
Yeah, I know the balance sheet is hard right now, but if I have to feel like if the board is saying there's a mandate for Iger to grow the company, you don't just grow the company by not investing. So there's got to be a level of investment, and whether that means that they're going to have to, their cash on hand is going to get decimated for a bit.
Well, and I think it's not so much that, they're going to need to invest, there's no question, but it's what do they invest in? Do they decrease their investment in direct to consumer, given the change of that business, and move it to the parks? Do they just kind of keep the status quo for another year? You got to remember, this is 2020. He will be on through the end of 2024's fiscal year, which is when Disney Plus is supposed to be profitable. And
in that case, then, we were talking about what's going to happen with Hulu. Does it save Disney money to move that content over to Disney Plus and sell Hulu in whatever form to NBC? Does that make the money, or does it save them money? What is Hulu? Well, that's what I'm saying. But if you put all the FX stuff, if you take the content, like the FX and the movies, the 20th, the general entertainment, and move that, and then whatever, I don't know about the third party stuff, like things that air on Fox broadcast that aren't actually produced by Disney. Well, and I think, the way the streaming was working out is basically Hulu is becoming more Hulu only, right? Like they were losing, like they lost NBC's rights. It was becoming basically a Disney original streaming service. With live TV, I guess the live TV is the component that's right. Makes things a bit more interesting. That's also not the live TV business is not where the problem is, right? It's not the problem, but it's what's growing. So if that's the thing that, if you look at what people are like, oh, why does Disney even care about Hulu at this point if they're adding content that's mature to Disney Plus, and it's the live TV is the thing that kind of sticks out as well. We don't have that on Disney Plus. Not that you couldn't add that in some capacity, but that's not there. Well, but you could. So the question is what? And I don't know the deal Disney has with NBC, but
can you move the content over basically and just add Star like it is in many other places of the world? Sell Hulu as a service with virtually no content on it, and this NBC, basically pivot Hulu from being a Disney company streaming service to an NBC Comcast streaming service. They have Peacock, which obviously isn't gaining traction, but what are they buying then? If Hulu is not part of the Disney bundle, what is it? What are they essentially selling to NBC? And I don't know. That's obviously a big question for Iger, right? Is how can he structure a deal to either make Hulu, or does he even care about Hulu? It seems like that was, before everything happened, that was a big reason he bought 21st Century Fox, right? To get controlling interest at Hulu. But that was also a time when Disney Plus was Disney Plus without any adult content. And, that's a change that Chapek made. But we don't know any of these deals that Bob did that Bob might either pivot away from or de-emphasize, right? He bought the extra cruise ship. He did that restructuring, putting Kareem Daniel in charge of sort of all the P&L for anything involving a screen. De-emphasized theatrical to a wide extent, which Bob Iger did to a fair point too. But it's funny because Wall Street was always saying they should just put everything in streaming, and this proves that they don't know anything they're doing, because that was the absolute wrong call, right? Not that Disney shouldn't have had streaming service, but killing theatrical for streaming didn't make sense to a person with logic. But it made financial sense to these guys because short-term gain. That Disney did it, and Disney's paying the price. And it's unknown yet whether their sort of assistance in killing theatrical will ever reverse itself. Are family films just streaming films now? Or we've seen good results from Black Panther: Wakanda Forever, but that's not those big blockbusters are still doing well at the big screen, but not much else is. Now, I don't know where that means, how much of that's a culture change and how much that's just pandemic layover, or just sort of lack of screens because the theaters, sort of what do you call it? A self-fulfilling prophecy, because there's no screens, because there's no movies, and then when there's movies, there's no screens because they don't hire up for it. So there's a lot of questions out there about the future of the theatrical business, and it's hard too because you don't release all that many movies. And, sometimes movies don't perform well because they're not great movies, or they don't market them well, or whatnot. Or sometimes they perform well because they do market them well, or they are good movies. That doesn't necessarily mean, you can't compare any one film to any other film, unfortunately, because that makes this a lot easier.
So if you were Iger in this position, how much rollback do you think is reasonable? In terms of, I don't like this, but I can live with it, I can work with it. When is it an actual sunk cost, or when is it a fallacy?
I think a reorg is going to happen. I think a reorg is inevitable. Even just for morale's sake, giving control back to the business units just seems like obvious to me. And it's sort of it was the first thing that Bob Iger really chafed with, right? You can talk about the Scarlett Johansson thing or whatever, but everyone's going to make mistakes. Bob Iger made mistakes, but that seemed like a bad strategy call to Bob Iger. Things like Genie Plus and the weird park pricing strategy, I don't see that changing rapidly soon, especially, given the financial situation Disney's in. You might see a slowing of the sort of schizophrenic changing to constantly, where every day there's a new ticketing wrinkle. It'll be. I think that's one thing where they're gonna have to weigh the financial results versus the sort of PR of everything. But I think you're gonna see more of a pivot on rollback on the media side than you are on the park side. You may see an increased investment, but that's not even necessarily really a pivot as much as just a reallocation. Park reservations, things like that. I don't know if that's going to go away. Just because Bob Iger, it's just not where the energy is. That it's not the thing that he needs to fix right now.
Even though it's the thing that to fans most obviously they're like, oh, that's the thing we hate about Chapek is all of these parks changes, and those are probably, in my mind, going to be not the last thing to get changed, if at all, but they're not going to be, it's not like the shackles immediately are like turned to pixie dust.
Right. Yeah. Well, and I mean, that's the question to me is does he do some of that stuff just to appease fans, or does he? Because it's not really the problem, right? I mean, it's not the Wall Street problem. He's got two problems. He's got a PR problem, which part of it's fixed just by him not being Bob Chapek, and then you have a Wall Street problem, which is not the parks. It's media. And I just watching CNBC, and you always have the contrarian on there, but they're just talking about how euphoric people on the content side are. And I mean, you're seeing it on tweets. I mean, you're seeing it from people who you didn't even know who knew who Bob Chapek was. I mean, Josh Gad, Michael Eisner, weird people's mother-in-laws who don't go to the parks. It's this has transcended our little sphere, and I don't know what. I don't know what the future holds. Obviously, I mean, I've learned. Michael Eisner was easy to prognosticate what he was going to do, because Bob Iger would just, in the best way, would do his own thing. March would be his own drummer, and with one obviously glaring exception, he was usually right. Which I know is a terrible way to say that, but the one thing he has left to do is basically figure out how to do Succession at Disney, which is the one thing he's been sort of, I don't even know, there's not a word to describe how bad he has been at that. I mean, now maybe the only thing you could say is maybe he hasn't been that bad because it resulted in more Bob Iger. But picking Bob Chapek was obviously a mistake, and it became a mistake fairly quickly. It's I just don't know. I don't know. We used to joke that he was always going to be asked on an earnings call about Succession, right? Because they needed it, and we're going to get that again, right? Every call it's going to be like, well, so how's that working? Especially specifically called out in his marching orders.
I still can't get over the way that this story broke, and like you're saying, it's kind of transcended our circle. I was very surprised when out of nowhere I get a text from my dad, "Are you Team Iger?" I was just like, "Oh, okay. I guess he's up and looking at some sort of news." So I think I've also seen takes about how it's kind of a bad look for everyone involved, and so they might take a few lumps at kind of admitting defeat, and if you undo everything that you've done for the past 3 years or whatever, like that's a waste of time and money. So not all of those rollbacks are going to be celebrated that in the way that someone might think.
It's just, to me, the hubris of Bob Chapek to go through some unprecedented challenges at Disney and try and push Bob Iger out of the influence just seems like, I understand you want to be your own guy, but he picked you. You got the job because of him. He's done a fantastic job, and you're just going to ignore his advice, push out his people. The question right now is Peter Rice going to come back? Who seemed like, a talent executive who got pushed out because he wasn't Team Chapek. Well, Team Chapek is probably in process of, going to the free agent market. And, I just wondering, we'll never know, but what would have happened if Bob Iger just stayed on another 2 years? It got through this pandemic and everything. What decisions would he have made? How much effort's going to be sort of fixing, how much of this is going to be Rise of Skywalker undoing,
Yeah, I mean, that's a really good point. Like, I hope it's not that, because that was, I think, Rise of Skywalker is worse than Last Jedi. I like Last Jedi.
Well,
Rise
yeah,
of Skywalker, there's parts of it I like, but oh my gosh.
But, if they spent that middle period planning what they wanted for the third, instead of just doing, having 3 separate visions, it would have been a lot more consistent. And that's the question. Bob Iger always said, we can't go home again. You can't just go back. Well, I mean, he is, but that was what his message was. Like, you don't. This often doesn't work. Now, Howard Schultz at Starbucks is an interesting case because he fixed things. Then he brought in a new CEO that, his second pick was a lot better than his first pick. And it'll be interesting to see what happens.
Jack Dorsey went back to Twitter. Look how they're doing right now. Fantastic.
So we got some breaking news, not about anything related to this, but there will be a new Avatar trailer tonight during Monday Night Football.
You didn't know that?
Oh, no. Is that on our website?
It's not on our website. I don't know, but they were playing commercials for it all weekend.
Well, then it should have been on our website.
We'll just post the trailer when we get the trailer. People don't need to know it.
And then I'm sorry, just looking what else came in. We do have an exclusive clip of Mighty Ducks Game Changers from this season, and then Brandy and Rita Ora are joining the Disney Plus original movie The Pocket Watch, the newest installment in the Disney Descendants franchise. So I will send this off. Brandy is playing Cinderella.
A brand new role for her.
Right, and Rita Ora is playing the Queen of Hearts. So this is coming from Disney branded television. Exciting news.
A thing that still exists for now.
Yeah. Well, it'll be interesting. There's a lot that's going to be interesting over the next couple weeks. I mean, I think, we talked, I did an article about how Disney 100 was going to be like Bob Iger's big Chapek big coming out party. He didn't get that far. So
yeah, his turns out his Oswald moment was him being Al Michaels.
Yeah, right. Also, just got news that the review embargo for the Guardians of the Galaxy Holiday Special will lift at 9 a.m. Pacific time on Wednesday. So I presume Mac, if he is on sometime between now and then, will have his review up then. And Alex's Strange World review is probably going up as we speak. And you can check that out. I don't know. What did you end up? Let me ask him. What did you end up giving it?
4.
4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 what?
I was going to do the playing cards that Ethan uses, but I couldn't find the actual name. Like, I forgot what it is, and I couldn't find it in the press notes. I think I went with, like, appendages of Splat.
Okay. So 4 out of 5 appendages.
That's surprising since his tweet didn't seem very enthusiastic.
Everyone keeps saying you're talking about my social reaction?
Yeah, because I figured because you were focusing on looking for a silver lining almost.
That's what Doobie said too. No, I just try not to give away spoilers, and this is a film that's hard to review without giving away like some pretty major plot twists that I was trying to steer clear of.
But so I'm looking forward to seeing it under Iger's first movie release. It's interesting. I watched GMA this morning.
How many times do they have to say that Disney is the parent company of ABC News?
The only ones, because they didn't spend that much time, but you could kind of see them excited, but realizing that they can't be that excited because they're
famously, there's no bias.
Right, famously. Tickets are on sale for Avatar too. Let's see, what's the El Cap going to do?
They're going to build a pool in the backyard.
They're just going to give you free water, but not in bottles because that's bad for the environment.
I saw 3 Disney trailers when I saw Black Panther 2 this weekend, so that was interesting.
Oh, which ones you get?
Got Little Mermaid and Avatar and Ant-Man. And then Mario from not Disney. And Shazam was the other one. So yeah, only 5 trailers. Go Alamo.
Okay, got some more breaking news. From Disney.
Lunar New Year for DCA.
What's that?
So
Lunar New Year and Food and Wine. So Lunar New Year will be January 20th through the 15th of February. Food and Wine will be March 3rd through April 25th. So
you ready to wrap so you can actually
yeah, no, I'm just reading to see if there's anything here. And then
people love that.
Well,
you should get like a physical paper to read, so it's even more exciting.
Yeah, well, I want to check to see. I just don't know why. Why? I mean, as I said, I would just want more information from the Walt Disney Company right now about like how much are we paying Bob Iger? How much are we paying Bob Chapek to leave? How much does he get paid to just sit at home?
Is there a non-compete just in case Comcast really wants to snap him up?
Well, I heard there was, but I don't know. I don't see. I hear that from sources. I don't hear that from any place reputable. I mean, not that they're not reputable, but official. So I don't know.
I mean, I feel like it's pretty standard, but also if they don't care, then.
Well, that's the question, right? Is what do they value? But
do you think there's a chance that Iger's ultimate successor will be Jeff Saturday?
Well, how's he been doing with the Colts? I've been too busy to watch football.
I don't know. At worst he's 500. So
that's that. Bob Chapek wishes he was 500.
Colts won by a point. So yeah, he's 1-1. Well,
very good. So if you say at best he's 500, if they won,
because he was undefeated as of last week.
Doesn't he play for the Colts? Is he on the Colts?
He's the coach.
Right. So if they won, they win this week?
No, they lost by.
Oh, they lost by 1 point. Okay. So
yes.
500.
Which I don't think they use in football, but.
Yeah, CNBC is trying to get I believe he's looking for the 8K filing with the money. It's got to. I mean, me too. I'm on the SEC. I'm in touch with SEC right here, and there's nothing. So, we'll probably, depending on when it comes in, we'll maybe go back live. But in any case, I think that's about all I have at this moment. Oh, is California's come back? Was that in the email that I didn't read?
It's in the thing.
Oh, okay. It's not in the email. Oh, but
they've done it in the past too for the DCA.
Yeah. The one thing that's interesting in here is they talk about the show in front of World of Color, which presumably will be World of Color 1. But I guess it depends. Lunar New Year kind of crosses over. So it starts the 20th.
The last time I was before Oogie Boogie Bash, last time I was at the Disneyland Resort during normal park hours was for Lunar New Year 2020. So
it's been a bit.
It's kind of like Jeremiah with Notre Dame.
Yeah. Yeah, I'd like to point out he went to the Statue of Liberty last weekend, and everything's still okay.
Yeah.
So just looks like Disney's still up about 6 points. Still waiting.
So what, 97?
Yeah. So we're just waiting for more information, which hopefully come. He said he would talk to the cast members today. I haven't heard anything about a sort of all hands meeting yet. It's just 9:00 now. Actually, let me check in.
But we all know he got up at 4 to start his workout and everything.
Yeah, but the people that need to schedule the meeting might not be up. I mean, if those things don't happen over
traffic at Dodger Stadium last night was.
Yeah, they should have just kept this. Just said, "Hey, Elton, once you get off the stage, just can we use that for a second?" But I think that'll be interesting because I don't know how he's going to do it. It was, is he going to do it as Q&A where people are going to get a chance to ask questions, or what? This is his chance to really convey his vision, and we'll find out if he does. But anyway, I guess we should wrap up. So Doobie's not here, and I'll talk to you later.
All right, bye.
Is that okay? The bagel?
Yeah, okay.
What the market wants right now.
I'll talk to you later, Kyle.
We can be closer to that.
We're still live.